What has been your worst experience flying in a plane? Turbulence so bad, just before landing in LGA that the flight attendants screamed in horror. They do this for a living, so naturally, I shat my pants.
20,000 feet, the O2 masks come down. Lung silence from the crew. Finally, the pilot comes on and says lots of electrical systems are out and we're landing at a small airport in 9 minutes. The descent was on full air brakes, which made the flight loud and shaking, with kids screaming because their ears were hurting, parents screaming at their kids to blow while holding their noses, adult behind us slapping his thighs shouting endlessly, "Oh no. Oh no." But we got an $8 voucher for lunch at the airport while we waited for a new plane.
Child screaming her lungs out in the seat behind us for the last 40 minutes of a 10-hour flight because she didn't want to put her seatbelt on for the descent, and her useless father telling her stop screaming 100 times, then arguing with the flight attendants by saying, "Look at her, she doesn't want to put the seatbelt on, there's nothing I can do." The saving grace was one very sassy male flight attendant who would walk by every 2 minutes and just say "be the parent" to the father and then continue walking. It was hilarious.
About 6 years ago, I was sitting on the plane and I suddenly felt a tickle in my throat. It just wouldn't go away. I'd cough and cough and cough, nothing. The only thing that helped was ice chips, but even then I couldn't stop. It was miserable. That night I woke up in the middle of the night with 2 swollen eyes, swollen lips, hives all over my body, hot joints, and a tight chest. I was having some severe allergic reaction to something. Which means that on the plane, my throat was closing and I just didn't know it. Of course the ice chips helped because they were keeping the swelling down. What's weird is that has never happened before or since then, and I'm not allergic to anything that I know of.
I was on a nighttime flight 15 years ago. All of a sudden, the cabin lights are turned on to full blast and the captain makes an announcement. "You may be smelling a noxious odor. We have an electrical fire on board, and can't be sure how quickly it might spread. We are being diverted to the nearest airport and will be executing an emergency landing in 15 minutes. Please give your attention to your flight attendants as they instruct you in proper crash landing procedure." I would have thought there would be hysteria, but everyone became deathly quiet. I had my 11-month-old with me and was advised to hold him in my arms and assume the crash landing procedure as best as possible to shield his body with mine. Everyone on that plane thought we were dead. I was talking quietly to my baby, pointing out the window at the earth below and telling him how beautiful it all was. I didn't want him to die scared. After about 10 minutes and no catastrophic failure, we all began to relax a bit, thinking that the fire was contained or spreading extremely slowly. We all positioned ourselves for a crash landing. The tarmac was ablaze with the flashing lights of fire trucks, ambulances, and police vehicles, all in preparation for a worst-case scenario. We landed smoothly and without incident, thank God. That was a really, really bad 15 minutes.
12-plus-hour flight. Middle aisle on a 747. The seat recliner was broken, the guy next to me took his shoes off and his feet stank, the woman to my left spilled orange juice on me, and the headphone plug for the in-flight entertainment was broken. I did get extra potato chips as a compensation for the seat problem, though.
I was on a small commuter plane, think about 20 seats, single file the length of the cabin, and we hit a wind rotor, I think that's what it's called, off the mountains. It felt like a giant baby grabbed the plane and shook it like a rattle. Hands down the worst turbulence I've ever felt. Other than that, my trips have been rather uneventful.
Not my story, but one from my father. He was flying in Russia and there was a terrible storm during the flight and obviously it caused extreme turbulence. Then the captain turned on the PA system and told everyone, "This is Captain Betsmertny speaking. We are passing through some light turbulence, so please fasten your seatbelts," in the most monotonous voice possible. Just to note, the name Betsmertny translates in Russian to undying. Also, a lightning strike hit the wing, which was pretty scary.
This was when I was 10 to 11 years old. Went on a 9-hour flight and had the middle seat. An older woman sat in the window seat and had a horrendous smelling perfume on. The kind that gives you a headache in the first 10 minutes. She went to the restroom and reapplied her perfume every couple of hours. The smell plus turbulence was enough for me to throw up for the duration of the flight. For years after, I was so scarred that I took motion sickness pills every flight. Only to realize I didn't have motion sickness, it was just that old woman's horrible perfume.
Getting food poisoning 6 minutes before landing and experiencing the landing on the toilet.
I had a lot of ear problems as a kid that required multiple surgeries. I figured out on my first flight at age 19 that my ears could still bother me when the worst ear pain of my life hit me during the descent. Since then I figured out how to make them pop, making it less of an issue. But I was unprepared that first time and spent quite a bit of time holding back tears until my ears popped on their own a few minutes after landing.
Finally, something I can answer. I was headed to the Philippines on a 2-week vacation with my cousin. We were in San Francisco waiting to board. Our plane got delayed 4 hours. That's just the start. Finally, after boarding, they had overseated the plane and no one was volunteering. So they started to force people off the plane and I had been chosen. After some arguing and negotiating, me and my cousin thankfully stayed on the plane. After taking off and eating our dinner on the plane, the lights got turned off. As the flight attendant was navigating the cabin and handing out drinks, she tripped over someone's foot in the aisle and spilled beer over me and my cousin. After getting cleaned up and into clean clothes, almost everyone was asleep as we were in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It was roughly 3 a.m. at this point. I can never sleep on planes, so I was wide awake. I decided to go brush my teeth and use the restroom. Being a multitasker I am, I was using the restroom while brushing my teeth. I know it's unsanitary, but being a guy and having 2 hands makes me productive, haha. Then everything went south. The plane gave one small bump warning of turbulence with no comment from the pilot. Out of nowhere we hit dead air. The plane dropped, and I mean dropped. My body flew up and smashed the ceiling, toothpaste and pee flying everywhere in the latrine. Meanwhile, all I hear is bloody murder screaming on the cabin outside the door. I was on the ceiling for a solid 5 seconds that felt like 5 minutes. We finally hit good air and leveled out. In comes smashing back down and hit hard. Latrine always an absolute mess. I rush out of the bathroom to my seat and buckle in immediately. The cabin was destroyed. People's food, drinks, personal items were everywhere. Seats were soaked, including mine. Ceiling had food stuck to it. People were still screaming and crying. The pilot came on and said that the dead air was no on the radar and the rest of the flight would be smooth. And thank God it was. The rest of the flight was peaceful. But holy hell, was the first half of a 10 hours flight miserable. Thankfully I always pack 2 change of clothes on carry-on for international flights, so I had another clean pair to change into. TLDR. 4-hour delayed flight. Almost got kicked off due to overbooking. Beer spilled all over me. Crazy turbulence which caused pee and toothpaste to go everywhere and hearing bloody murder, and then a messy cabin for the remainder of the flight. Always wear a seatbelt even when the sign is turned off. Edit. Spelling.
We were flying from Florida to London when one of the engines caught fire somewhere out over the Atlantic, so had to turn back and land at New York. The engine on the replacement plane also caught fire, so the pilot had to turn back and land at New York. We didn't chance it with a third plane and went with a different carrier. I was 8 years old at the time, and for some strange reason, I'd never had a nightmare before then. My first nightmare was on the third plane back, and involved a Mickey Mouse in a glass coffin and an emaciated green version of Thing from the Addams Family.
We ran into one of our neighbors on a flight going home. He was put next to an old lady who used him as a pillow, then ordered a Coke and spilled it on him, then got coffee and spilled it again. And then another coffee and spilled it on him again. He flipped out and was moved into our seat row.
May your day be filled with joy and happiness. And please remember to subscribe to Upvote for the best quality content every day.